Hello, hello, and welcome to another week of BlackLantic. We are in person at the CHMA studios in Sackville, New Brunswick. Thank you, CHMA, for loaning us your space while I am here visiting, because when this airs, I will have turned 30. I will maybe be flirty, but I will definitely be thriving.
Happy birthday to our young Hillary, still a baby, 30. And definitely happy Black Lit Month, Black History Month to all of our viewers and listeners out there. It's Black History Month. We think every month is Black History Month. We know that Black history is Canadian history. But this is the month where there's a bigger focus on that. We'll be talking about some events coming up this month. And of course, by the time of this airing, even there's going to be more. So make sure you check out our Instagram channel, BlackLantic. While you're at it, wherever you're watching or listening to this, if you haven't already, please subscribe, follow, hit that like button, share it with a friend. All the things that help us move forward, especially if you can consider donating to us. Find us on our website, whether it's a one-time donation, a couple dollars a month. We don't make any revenue off the air of this podcast, so your contributions really help us continue to do the work and cover the costs of bringing this to you every week.
Just a quick addition, if you have an event and you want us to amplify it, DM us, email us, blacklantic@gmail.com. We want to share what the community is doing and what they're up to.
Absolutely.
Ready to get in the episode?
Let's get into it. BlackLantic Media acknowledges that it carries out its work on the traditional unceded territory of the Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Pesquetumakati peoples.
I would also like to acknowledge that I am seated on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people.
Hi, we're back. We just formulated a plan for something else.
We had a staff meeting in the middle of that land acknowledgement. Is that rude? I mean, we listen to it every week, but also we're planning. We're building.
I hope it's not rude.
We acknowledge.
I don't know many podcasts that do that. I hope it's not. If it's rude, let us know. We just had a very successful 36-second business meeting.
And thank you for
during that intro,
listening to the land acknowledgement while we did that.
And, we're so glad we have that consistent land intro going now, so that we can. Yeah,
absolutely. We're here together in person.
Yeah,
it's been a vibe. Yeah. Excited to say that. So this is airing on the 25th, but our next week episode, just want to plug so that you tune in. Clinton's sister, Charlene Carr, amazing international author, will be talking about her book We Rip the World Apart, which I got to read in advance, so you will see me in the same outfit. Don't come for me. Talking very passionately about that book. But weather's nice, snowy. It's Moncton. I'm here.
Yeah, it's not that snowy. I mean, Toronto's thankfully paved. Yeah, but I mean, this is our third or fourth winter in a row in Moncton where, I mean, the snow hasn't really fallen. I stopped paying for snow removal. My snowblower that is not even working this year, and I haven't worried about it yet, although we're only February, so there's still some chances for some snowstorms. But I don't know. I keep saying we're due for a really bad winter, and it just hasn't hit yet.
Yeah, that climate change really coming for us.
Absolutely.
Black Lit Month. Mm-hmm. Something we sort of, well, no, we didn't introduce the concept, but we really had fun last year with Black Lit Month. We also recorded in person. Maybe that'll be our recurring tradition. We always get together for my birthday ahead of Black Lit Month to get double lit. We wanted to share, of course, some of the things that the community is doing, as we mentioned at the top of the episode. And a lot of these things that we've been sharing have been on our Instagram. So as we already said, make sure you follow us. But I will start with one that is sitting in our emails. We're so excited when we get emailed. We have a coming up at actually not coming up. It has already started. As of January 12th and going until March 8th at the St. John Arts Center, A Time, A Place, Our Gaze, reframing the Subaltern, haha, I only learned about that term the other day, was curated by Kenneth Scott. It is 80 plus vintage black and white vernacular photographs of people from St. John's Black community beginning in the early 1900s, which I believe will be of great interest to the people of African descent of St. John and beyond, is what Kenneth Scott writes. The men, women, children depicted in the photos represent various classes, statuses, and stations in life. Viewers who visit will also have an opportunity to appreciate some of St. John's long gone businesses, housing, and social institutions, such as the St. Philip's AME Church. So make sure you go check that out. Again, that is at the St. John Arts Center. It's already on, and it will be going on until March 8th.
Awesome. Speaking of the arts, also coming up is something that some of our friends are going to be a part of.
Yay.
So down in Fredericton at the Beaver Brook Art Gallery, they're excited to announce a new speaker series called Expressions in Excellence, Voices from Black Artists. For the month of February, the speaker series takes place every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. and will shine a spotlight on the immense talent and cultural richness of Black artists in the community. The series not only serves as a platform for artistic expression, but also a catalyst for dialogue, understanding, and unity. The series also provides a unique opportunity to amplify the voices of Black artists who've been historically marginalized in the art world. We are seeing change in the past few years, which is great, but it's a platform for their stories, experiences, and artistic perspectives. So we have Tondawe McCarthy, that will be one of the speakers, I believe, on one of the Thursdays. Gary Weeks, excellent photographer. And if you didn't catch it, we were in the Maritime Edit last month. That was a big achievement for us. Thank you to Tondawe and Gary, the photographer and the interviewer, for that series. So you can still order that copy online, I believe, at maritimeedit.com or .ca. There are other artists as well.
There's also Aaliyah Michaud, who helped as well, assisting in the Maritime Edit. So thank you, as well as Rothschild is there. And then I know I have the name of the other artist, but do I remember? Listen, I'm getting old, as we've discussed, and I don't always remember everything. Why don't you
So Rothschild is he primarily a digital artist, or is it, oh my gosh, his work on multiple occasions?
He did the fist on the can that we saw at Music New Brunswick, Francophone in the community, I think maybe sketching. They call him Magic Hand, which I think is super sweet, and that's so awesome to have someone in this community.
And I'll just pull up his page quickly. If you're planning on traveling around, this is a really great opportunity to see. You should get down to Fredericton if you can. And really interesting.
The other artist, sorry, I wasn't told her name, but she is a 75-plus-year-old folk artist from Nova Scotia who's celebrating 25 years as an artist, which is absolutely amazing. 25 years as an artist is something wildly to be celebrated.
Yeah.
While you keep looking at some Rothschild art, again, if you watch our episode, you're currently seeing art, and you've been seeing some visuals from our Instagram as well. If you're listening, well, sorry that I don't have all the information fast enough. There's also the 8th edition of the Halifax Black Film Festival going on February 23rd to 26th. They're also having iterations of this film festival in Montreal and in Toronto at different dates. So, Black people from all across, from Ontario all the way to Halifax, can enjoy some Black films. But again, that's the 23rd to the 26th in Halifax. And in 2 days from the date of this airing, on January 27th, if you at the Black Culture Society in PEI is having an opening gala for Black History Month. Tickets are on sale for $20. Hopefully by the time this is airing, it is not too late for it.
I can't find it. Yeah.
Go back. I saw it that way.
Go up to
up.
Okay.
Up. Can only go up from here. One more. That one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We work as a team. It's going to be at the Delta Hotels on 18 Queen Street, Charlottetown, PEI.
It would
Charlottetown,
be
PEI.
Charlottetown.
If it's not, can't you just get across the island in 2 hours?
No. The island's bigger than you think. No, it would take
one end to the other in about 2.5 hours.
Maybe from one end to the other. I don't know. It's I don't know.
Sorry, PEI, but head over to that gala.
It's going to be in Charlottetown.
Yes, of course.
Sure. And there is the video for it. Yeah, at the Delta. There's definitely not a Delta anywhere else. That I can tell you.
Amazing. His lineage is from there. He can be salty. It's sassy and accurate.
Salty? It's just accurate. I love PEI.
We love PEI.
All right.
Actually, I'll put this on there very quickly.
That, and last but not least, and definitely not last. So go to our Instagram. You did? I must have been reading or researching something.
I did, but here's the beautiful graphic for the Halifax Black Film Festival.
But I know that I've already pre-scheduled like other events. Like there are workshops and learning seminars, and there's this one thing that's completely online. They've got you'll see it. They've got a lot of good free workshops coming up.
I will briefly mention before we leave these and go to our articles is that since at this point it should have been announced, it's not happening in the East Coast, but I am curating an art gallery in Toronto. I'm curating Crybaby Art Gallery along with Moni Zakour for the last 2 weeks from February 15th to the 28th. So if you are some of the maybe more rare Toronto listeners of our podcast, 15th is the opening night, and the 22nd I will also be running a fashion show, and then there will be an artist meet and greet on the 24th. And if you're from the East Coast, I'm just bragging about the cool stuff I get to do, but I'm also very nervous. I'm very excited.
Oh, you're going to do great. I'll be in Toronto at some point for Black History Month as well. We'll tell you more about that later. But, and this was not released in synchrosity with Black History Month, but on Spotify, now you can type in BlackLantic musicians and find a new hot playlist of BlackLantic musicians across all genres. The BAM playlists, which stands for BlackLantic Musicians, which is part of another project I'm working on called the BAM Podcasts, short form, all about music, interviewing musicians. But you know, even myself listening to this kind of music before I did the research, I had no idea how many Black musicians there were in Atlantic Canada. And even so far, I've found over 50, and I've poured through a lot of their music, and this playlist is really something. So make sure you check it out and subscribe and follow that as well.
That also reminds me very briefly, we'll be on CBC all throughout the month in Moncton, and I think across all of Atlantic Canada, sharing 10 songs from Black artists as part of our community that also will probably be featured on BAM at some point, I would suspect. But you can check us out on the radio, sharing sort of like, I would call it a micro version of a much greater and bigger podcast and series to come. But thank you, CBC, for giving us a Black History Month opportunity.
No, big thanks to Information Morning with Jonah Brewer, Khalil, and Curtin. And last but not least, on the music topic, also we have partnered with a New Brunswick organization called East Track Mind. They release curated playlists and encourage businesses to play Atlantic Canadian music in their businesses to help increase exposure and increase spins. BlackLantic has partnered with East Track Mind to release a family-friendly Black music playlist for Black History Month and beyond, of course. So if you want to listen to, the BlackLantic Musicians playlist is definitely not censored. It's not G-rated by any means. It's just a representation of the music. But if you want something that you can listen to in front of the kids or just play in your business in the background, check that out as well. East Track Mind with BlackLantic. So there's lots of music opportunities to represent Atlantic artists for the month.
Doing so much.
We are doing a lot.
And we're very happy about it.
All right.
We're going to get into the news now. Or am I allowed to even use the word news? Where are we at with Bill D19? We are going
to just talk to you about things that we know about that are going on. We are not a channel that reports the news. We are not a news organization. So we don't, if you, just in the event you are not listening to this from Canada, Canadian news has been banned on social media, so we are not news.
We're just two gals being pals, two guys being dudes.
Gals being pals.
Two guys being dudes.
All right.
I'm gonna start with this piece. We can start that
sure. Let me just not share that what I showed.
There is a school in Nova Scotia that is being restored. It's called the Old Birchtown Schoolhouse. They're restoring it and turning it into a museum to celebrate centuries of Black education. It is sharing and exhibiting what is documented as likely Nova Scotia's first integrated school. Now, when I read this, I obviously thought about the segregated school that we reported on that is called the Ottenabog School in Elm Hill area outside of St. John, where for years they only exclusively taught Black students. I believe there went from 40 students down to 10. And over a certain period of time, no white teacher was willing to go to the school and teach. And so the school ceased to exist. The Black students were not taught. And so we get this cycle of poverty, a lack of education, etc. But in Nova Scotia, the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre in Birchtown, Nova Scotia, is persevering a piece of Canadian history with a new exhibit that is recreating a historic Black school. Andrea Davis, common last name. The center's executive director says that Black loyalists escaped American slavery for freedom in Nova Scotia in the 1780s, but were barred from many public spaces. She shares that she gets really emotional hearing the stories of how Black loyalists didn't belong in the churches, the workplaces, or the schools. She says when she walks into the center, she can almost feel something that tells her that she has to be able to continue the work that she has to do. For some reason, I feel like I'm the one who has been burdened to do that, but blessed as well. So the old Birchtown Schoolhouse was built in 1835, and it was an active school until it closed in 1961. A former Birchtown student and now caretaker Daryl Acker had spoken to Andrea Davis, the executive director. He was enrolled in 1955 and was part of the last class. And he remembers getting wood from the shed and feeding the stove to keep the classroom toasty. Discipline could be rough with harsh physical punishment and a dreaded dunce hat. Man, that feels like cartoon era, but you have to, I guess, remember that those things were based on something real. What are your thoughts about, the first integrated school of Nova Scotia?
Well, first of all, it's interesting, hearing about the emotions that it evokes in other people, and it's wild. I mean, I've learned a lot about the first integrated school in America when I was a kid, and how police had to escort that Black girl into the school, and how people were angry and throwing things, and women had these signs, and it was so hateful. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they are restoring it and turning it into a museum is mm-hmm. It's great. It's important. We have to remember these things. I just saw the latest Trevor Noah stand-up special on Netflix. Yeah, and one thing that he talked about was Germany, and how interesting it was that Germany is one of those countries in the world that has done a really good job at not shying away from their honest history. Yeah. A really good job at saying, look, this is what happened. This is what we did. We need to remember this so we don't do it again. You shouldn't feel guilty about this, young people and children. You did not do this. This is not your fault. However, you need to know what we did, because this was horrible, mm-hmm. and it can't be done again. And, it's not like everyone walks around feeling guilty. And when we talk about history in Canada, I don't think it's to make our associates or many European people of European ancestry feel bad. But you have to know what really happened, because it affects generational trauma, generational finances, generational economic situations. And it also informs the fact that we have a right to get so upset about when we still see the racism today, when we still see the person hurling out the N-word or saying that, Black people are just lazy and this, that, and the other. Like, you have to know what happened. That's how I feel about it. So we see a lot of this happening in Nova Scotia. They're doing a really good job about it. We know people like Marie-Louise
McCarthy.
Why did I get really French?
Marie-Louise McCarthy.
Marie-Louise. We know that these are things that she's working really hard to preserve in New Brunswick, as well as her whole family line. Tondaway's project that he's working on. Nova Scotia is really good at that, though. Yep. And I love seeing stories like this, because the young really find history to be that interesting. And as you get older, Hillary, you could speak to that.
As I mature,
being older, 30, it's so important, because it can be repeated.
Absolutely. To that point, I mean, they talk a lot about that in that movie Origins that I will not stop talking about, because she walks through Germany through a museum, but it's also pointed to signs all around the city that show, what happened in Nazi Germany, and these things that, harken back to history should not repeat itself. And I think it's what the government's tried to do with the Truth and Reconciliation, but it has failed by, I think someone said, I saw recently someone posted they've only completed, I think, 18 out of the 94.
Oh, yeah.
And at that rate, it would take another 100 years for them to complete them. We've obviously brushed aside the systemic racism that exists for other communities, Black people, BIPOC communities.
Yeah.
However, I do think something like this is absolutely amazing. It was originally part of the Black Loyalist Heritage Society in the 90s, first opened a heritage site in 2000, and the school was part of the main exhibit. And it's actually the gentleman who is the keeper of it and like has been caring for the building, who went there, left Nova Scotia for 20 years and then came back and has been preserving the building. So absolutely amazing. And Ms. Davis says she wants to build up the displays and invite anyone with artifacts from that school or from similar schools of the era to get in touch if they can and add to the museum's collection.
Yeah, and I will say 19 out of 100 is better than, you know, the report on systemic racism in New Brunswick, where I think they've implemented 0 out of the 76.
They've implemented a curriculum that we worked on and that we're going to get. Maybe there's 3.
Which we're very proud of. You should reiterate that. Oh, go ahead.
Reiterate what?
Just the New Brunswick curriculum, because I think it's finally going to take place.
Yes. So we've worked very hard. Well, we haven't worked very hard. I don't want to sound like it was too laborious, but it was very exciting.
We did in the beginning.
I guess we did.
Oh my gosh. It was years in the works. But
we have worked for several years with the New Brunswick English department.
Now it's a waiting game, right?
Yeah, and we're waiting to have the curriculum of New Brunswick Black history implemented from K to 12. So we were very excited that that is in the works and that it is something that was recommended that is finally being done. It was in the works before the recommendations were released, but also I'm not going to get back into my anger on that.
Just before we move on to the last topic, again, just with history being so important, I mean, I never in my lifetime imagined I would see the kind of fighting that's going on in the world right now to this kind of scope with the amount of mass death, the amount of people being murdered, the feelings just circulating with the ICJ about accusations of genocide and ethnic cleansing. You know, anytime we ever talked about things like this, it was in the past. It was humans of the past. We've evolved, we've grown. We're never going to go back to that. And yet here we are. And every day in the news, you hear stories about other countries being possibly pulled into it. And will this create a World War III? And I thought we were smarter than this. We have nuclear weapons. We can't keep fighting like this. We're going to kill each other. And yet here we are again. So broader context, yes, compared to an old schoolhouse being renewed, but it's very important in Canada because there is still a lot of hatred that we remember what people of the past did. So that we don't do it again.
Hatred and always misinformation, right? Remember when Tondaway said that someone on the radio claimed that's like slavery hadn't happened to Black people or something like that? And it's like, these things have happened, and this is why we preserve history and have to have artifacts to look back at. It's why you can't burn books. You can't say that critical race theory is racism. That's why this podcast exists. That's why other mediums exist, to remind you some awful shit went down and we're going to be better for it moving forward. We're not accusing you of being a part of the problem. We just want everyone to be part of the solution. Speaking of solutions, see, that segue was so good.
Oh, I'm not ready for the segue. That was a good segue. But I mean, you could take it from us. Like, we're not accusing you of anything because our mothers are white and half of our families are white.
Can you imagine? It's like, Mom, you're racist.
We still have to talk about this.
Absolutely.
But yes, speaking of solutions, we are going to segue lots of news from Nova Scotia this week. And this particular story is important to me, and I'll tell you why in a second. But a homeless shelter is set to open at the Halifax Forum until August. So from now until August, it's going to start off with 50 beds initially, and they're going to add another within about 20 weeks. So the province and the HRM have announced that there will be a homeless shelter that's going to be operating from now until August. It's going to be a multi-purpose center with a 50 beds set up, and like I said, it's going to expand. This is really important in the winter, especially. obviously it's very cold up where we live,
Mhm.
and this will help people. But so some quotes here from the Community Services Minister, Trevor Boudreau. We recognize that there's still a number of people living rough, and in conversation with those living rough with service providers and outreach workers, it was determined that there was going to be another shelter on the peninsula. Now, I'm not sure where I read this, but I know there's about 375 beds being offered in total right now, that the provincial government is contributing $3 million to cover the operating costs. And this is the thing that I found most interesting and most relative to our recording, is that this is going to be administered through a community organization called 902 Man Up. So I met some members from 902 Man Up last year, last February, actually, when I was in Miramichi for what was it called? It was put on by the New Brunswick African Association, but it was a Black Summit in which they were discussing issues and bringing different groups together from different countries and diasporas, as well as, Native Canadians and New Brunswickers and such like that. And yeah, I met a gentleman from the 902 Man Up program, and they are the ones administering this. This is not the person I met, but Marcus James, the co-founder, said that this was a really important way of giving back, supporting those in need, helping the most vulnerable of the community. They are going to have quite stringent rules. It's going to be a no drug policy, which will deter some people who are homeless, but that's the way they're going to go. We also know that there are people who don't want to go to homeless shelters just because of violence and a fear of not being able to be kept safe and such like that. Where is it? Shoot, I had a little write-up on 902 Man Up
maybe further
that I was going to read, but what are your thoughts on this, Hillary?
Well, I will say, just to your point about the deterring people who do drug use, ironically enough, my day job works with the North End Community Health Center in the Halifax area, and they've opened a shelter that sort of acts like a substance abuse detox place, where I believe that they offer safe supply and sort of help people through this critical housing process. And it's offered people, I think, 50 beds as well, and their beds are constantly full, but it's also already saved the city, I think, like hundreds of thousands of dollars for people just not being in the ER, because they are the people who weren't getting their dose of, let's say, something, and then they would later show up there because they were maybe on the street doing something else, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, one, I think that we should have Marcus or another representative on the podcast, potentially for a specific episode that you've been trying to curate.
Yep.
However, I think that this is so important. People are literally out there freezing to death because our governments are, to me, in my humble opinion, not allocating funds as they should. They're putting them in the wrong places. The healthcare system is falling apart. The housing system is falling apart. Infrastructure is failing the entire country of Canada. And so I really think things like this are important to have exist and to be created. I hope that, they get more than that 3 million, because they are going to need this. And while I'm glad that it's, open and it will be closing in August, I hope that they are able to take a short break and potentially reopen or even expand for the next winter, because while August might be an okay time to maybe be precariously housed, although no time is good to be precariously housed, December will come quick again and people will be freezing and dying in the streets yet again.
Yeah. I agree completely.
That also reminds me, very briefly, was only last winter that someone froze to death in Moncton City Hall, right in front of the doors.
That was that horrible,
please do not forget
negative 40-degree day that we had, where many people in their homes were freezing and having a lot of trouble keeping their systems running. But 902 Man Up, if you want to look them up, they are a community organization based in Nova Scotia, Canada, founded in 2016. The 902 refers to the area code, of course, but the organization is dedicated to empowering and uplifting Black men and youth within the community. They focus on support, mentorship, and resources to address various issues such as mental health, education, employment, and community engagement, which is the homeless shelter part of it. They aim to create positive change by fostering a sense of responsibility, respect, and pride among Black men and boys. So really stand up, and I think that has to do with the fact that why they're having a strict no drug policy. They participate in community events and workshops, and so check them out. And last but not least, just before we wrap up, I'm not going to go into too much in-depth detail about this, but in terms of global news,
there is a Global Black Initiative Summit, I believe it was called, Impact Summit in 2024, which will be enabling Black-owned businesses to go global, which is going to be hosted in the illustrious Dubai.
Yeah, so really interesting part of the world to have this. But oh my gosh, everything that I had is just
But I think
gone.
back down.
No, that's okay. Well, I'll just read it from here. Sorry, everybody. Where is
There
the
we
article?
go.
Yeah, so the upcoming Global Black Impact Summit taking place next month in Dubai, like you said, will feature panel discussions, workshops, networking sessions on strategies for Black-owned businesses and brands to succeed globally and across different markets and customer segments. So some examples the article cites is Worldwide Technology, Jay-Z's Rock Nation, BET, Shea Moisture, Fubu, Dagnote, and other brands that actually are Black-owned, and BET is not Black-owned anymore, but we're able to expand globally among the world. I haven't even read this one article, but I know I've read many reports on the purchasing power of Black people and how much money they spend annually, billions and billions of dollars on things that don't support Black initiatives. That's it.
I was just going to look it up.
Yeah, thank
you. Because a good friend of the show, Ivor Pinder, who is probably listening, recently was looking into this. And so the Black dollar is responsible for over $1 trillion in spending on consumer goods and services. And Black Americans are responsible for 20% of all luxury goods purchased in 2021, even though they only represent 13% of the American population. And I looked this up for you, for someone. We're only 4% of Canadians are Black.
That's correct. About 10% in Toronto, but about 3 to 4% of Canadians.
Exactly. So just to keep that in mind when we talk about, how we can, further this impact and grow Black businesses and grow the Black dollar.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you should support a Black business just because they're Black. There's many other pillars and reasons to support. But I mean, again, if we talked a bit about history, but if you want to get into the deeper conversations of economics and generational wealth and the fact that, even after slavery, and they weren't called Jim Crow in Canada, but Jim Crow types of treatments and oppression and systemic racism, Black families did not have the same, and not to say that there's not poor white families, obviously there is, but Black families did not even have the opportunity to buy homes or to amass wealth or to...
I was going to because I was going to raise my hand that I was a poor white family, and then I remembered I'm Black, but my mom's white, and so I had this moment. You'll see in next week's episode when we talk about biracialism that I was just like...
That is an ongoing thing of what we are. Yeah, and that make sure you check the episode with Charlene Carr for more on that. But anyway. The point is, there really has been a lot less opportunity for Black families to have the same kind of equality. Now, wherever you live, there's probably a Black family in your neighborhood. If you consider yourself middle class or even well-to-do, there's probably a Black family in your neighborhood. And so you might say to yourself, see, Black people are not so bad. There's a Black family in our neighborhood and they're doing fine. But what you don't know and what you don't see is that, probably 90 to 95% of Black Canadians, and I just made up that number, but it's probably true. It's up there, are living in like project-like areas or really rough socioeconomical situations. And so if there's any other reason other than to support Black businesses that are doing good, and that's it. It's the opportunity to play catch up after all those years of oppression.
Absolutely. Conveniently, when we were talking about the value of the Black dollar, I had scrolling across, donate to us. You want to know the value of our Black dollar? Contribute to it. That's very much fine.
Please, yes, do not forget to donate at our website to help us keep doing what we're doing. This is our 3rd season. We continue to do this for passions, and
I gasped because next week's episode, though we didn't mention it in the episode, will be our 2nd birthday. We're 2 years old. I might be 30, but we're also 2.
We're getting up towards 80, almost 80 episodes.
Almost 80 episodes. So many guests. I could not do this without you. We could not do this without viewers, but we also would like to not do it with no money. Please send us money.
Hilarious.
Thank you.
All right. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and follow BlackLantic. Follow us on our socials. Or if you're listening audio, make sure you click that like button and follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever. Like, comment, share with a friend. Give us some feedback on the episode. Let us know what you think about the episode length, whether you prefer longer or shorter, or just anything. DM us, get in touch with us.
And